Alrighty. Live, we're ready to go. It's been a crazy night. So anyways, we are a little bit late per usual. I don't like being consistently late, but at least I'm consistent. So how are you guys tonight? Tonight, keep in prayer, and we're going to open in prayer, especially for the enigmatic and illustrious Dr. Jones. Him and his wife are in the hospital, and their baby will be with us soon. So we're going to open with a word of prayer for them, and then we're going to dive into this meaty, controversial, and fascinating subject. Let's see. Yep, that's on. Alrighty, so let's do that. Oh, banner. Let's turn off the banner, shall we? There we go. And I want to get that light's distracting, isn't it? Maybe I can do this. Move my monitor closer and switch it over to the monitor. That works. Does that work? Yeah, that probably works. All right. So let's do this prayer thing and let's jump right in. Dear Lord in heaven, please help Daniel and his wife as they are going through the entire experience of birth and everything. Lord, we know that it's your hands. Please keep the doctors aware and help them as they make the right decisions. Please help. I don't even remember what his name's going to be. It's terrible. But please help Baby Jones to Indiana, possibly. Please help him as he is being brought into this world. Please help everything to run smoothly and according to your plan as you've done, as you've created. Lord God, help him. You know that we've gone through birth and everything like this 4 times already, and you know it's not always easy, but please help all the complications to be taken down before them so that they can pass easily through and hold their baby in their arms without any kind of major issues or anything else cropping up. And please give them rest as they're going to need it. Please help them to sleep soundly and for the little boy to sleep soundly. And please bless them as they're embarking on parenthood. In Jesus' name, amen. So, here we are. Now, oh my goodness. If you guys notice, the internet has exploded in the last week, because last Sunday there was this debate between these two guys. This is kind of how this is going to kind of bespeak about how I feel how the debate went. It was between these two guys, Dan Hafley on the left and Mark Ward on the right. So I and many others feel that Mr. Hafley was not prepared, but there's a difference. If you guys have been listening to my channel for any length of time, you guys are aware, and everyone, just about every King James only content creator has had something to say about this debate and how it went down. And tonight I'm going to try to share some of my thoughts about how I thought it went down. I watched it live the one time. I have not watched it through 3 times like Brian Ross has. He mentioned that in a recent video that he made. But tonight I would like to share. I've got some interesting ideas. And if you guys have been watching me recently, especially, I believe in false friends. Okay? This idea that Mark has is not something new. False friends is not an alliteration I guess a Ripplinger type alliteration that Mark Ward just kind of came up with. This is actually a term. You see it on his documentary that he made called Authorized. He's talking to a Shakespeare scholar. And the Shakespeare scholar uses the word generous, I believe it was generous, as an example of a false friend. He said people will be reading Shakespeare and they come to the word generous in this one play. And they think, oh, well, he's saying, he's defending himself as, oh, he gives lots of money to people. But if you read it that way, it doesn't quite make a lot of sense, but I mean, you can roll with it. But what generous meant back in Shakespeare's day was that somebody was of noble birth. The generous part of it came to be applied, like we think of generous, came to be applied as, the noble people and the rich people would be giving money to people that were, that were of less status and less wealth than they were. And so then they were seen as generous, and the term kind of got crisscrossed to where, oh, that person is a generous person. They're noble, but then, oh, they're also being giving. So that is how you kind of get a false friend from generous. So this kind of stuff happens in the real world. It's not a Mark Ward original. In the King James Bible, there have been terms that have changed over time. We can accept that. In the Ankerberg discussion, I forget which number in that series it was, but Dan Wallace actually mentioned that in the Bible there are 300, and I think that might be a conservative estimate. There are 300 words or terms that have actually shifted meaning since 1611, and we don't use them the same today. And when you read it in the Bible, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And pardon the background if you hear anything out there. I think the noise gate on this should be set up well enough, but the kids are still up, and they got to get their food and things. So anyways, and please keep us in prayer. I don't know if I look exhausted or not. I've had people say that I do look exhausted. But the last month or so has been a trying time for me and my family. My wife is pregnant again, and she's having a really hard time with her energy levels and things. We're trying to take care of them as naturally as we can, and it's going pretty well. But she still has her times and her trials, and I, of course, can't be home all the time because I also have a full-time job at a hardware store. So, keep us in prayer, definitely. And if you guys want to help us out at all, because with 4 kids and 5 on the way, things are tight. Let me just say things are tight. You can check out our website, BibleVersionConspiracy.com, right there. And we'll be adding some different ways that you guys can help. There are some already there, so you guys can check those out. Our Buy Me a Coffee page as well as open. So anyways, just to let you know that. So let me pull up my notes. We're in Content Planner is a no. We're going to be talking about 2 debates now. October apparently is the month for debates. And we're even going to touch on Halloween. So stay tuned for that. There's some interesting things that if you've watched this channel for years, you already know what I'm going to say about Halloween for the most part. If you haven't, it might blow your mind. And I would highly recommend some books that are back here on the shelf. And there's going to be some changes coming to this little studio thing I have set up here. Right now, this is in a corner of our kind of storage room at this point. And it's going to be shifting. This room, I believe, is going to be becoming our bedroom. Or kids. I'm not sure how it's all going to work out. But anyways, I'm going to be taking up space in a bedroom is the big thing. So I'm planning to get a different bookshelf, a smaller one that's not white. I know this looks like this shelf is just completely broken off. It hasn't. It's just how it looks. It's not even at that angle in real life. I think it's mostly the camera angle or the camera lens kind of bowing it. But anyways, it's not this bad. That's not why I'm replacing it. That's got to change. A lot of these books got to go in storage. I want to digitize a lot of them. Major changes, major shifts, major problems. Alrighty. So let's get into the subject at hand. I was talking about the false friends idea. There are many different ones that present themselves. Mark Ward talked about several of them in his book called Authorized. He also mentions them in his book, his documentary by the same title. He has a YouTube video series online that you guys can check out. He's going to be going to 100 false friends and stopping. That's it. That's what he said his plan is. At the end of the year, it's going to be over. And there's one false friend that he said we could talk a little bit. He said it might be the last one that he talks about. And it's going to be in his book as well, which is coming out next year, called King James. King James Words You Don't Know, I believe is the title. Looking forward to that immensely. And because remember, when you're reading the Bible and you see something and you're like, oh, and you assume, oh, this means what I think it means, but really it doesn't. It means it in an older sense that we don't really have contact with. That makes it so that that part of the Bible has not been fully understood by you just because of the passage of time and the change of language that happens naturally. No error on the King James Bible translator's part, none at all. No error on your part even. It's just that there's a disconnect between our century and the 17th century. So, lost my train of thought. The one that I think he's going to leave for last is probably going to be my favorite. And I'm excited about it because it teaches us how to look at the Bible in different phrases, how to find false friends also on our own, because he may not cover all of them. And it's a perfectly logical process that he goes to find these things. And one thing that I didn't really like about the debate is the debate that I mentioned, just in case you just tuned in, is between this guy and this guy, Dan Hafley and Mark Ward. So the one thing that I didn't really like about the debate, especially from Hafley, was he wanted to keep trying to serve, I think, the King James only crowd at certain points, where he tried to introduce the idea of missing friends, like 1 John 5:7, Acts 8:37, blah, 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 blah. All these different verses and words and things that are not in the critical text and hence aren't in modern versions. So we have the missing friends idea, but the debate was not about missing friends. It's okay that they were mentioned, but I also like how Mark Ward handled it and got the debate back on track. Other thing that I didn't like is because the King James Bible has a lot of archaic words in it, but the thing is, when you run across something that's archaic or it's difficult, then it's like okay, you go get a dictionary if you have one. But what does that do? It makes it so that you're dependent on a secondary source to unlock the translation of the Bible that you have before you. And that's perfectly legitimate if your dictionary talks about it. So the problem with that is that the dictionary idea, and also the problem with the Gail Ripplinger idea of right here, the dictionary inside the King James Bible, where she claims that the King James Bible self-defines all of the archaic words within the context of the verse where they're included. Problem with that is that, yes, it may define them, but you may completely miss it because in a false friend scenario, you're seeing a word that you think you know, and you're not looking for something else to present itself. I also don't personally think that the Bible's built-in dictionary idea pans out. Gail, as we see from New Age Bible versions, and as we will see in the future as we go through it, and a lot of this month has been dedicated into looking into these sorts of things, and I am just horrified. she's one to really see meaning where there truly is no meaning. And it can be a detriment to factual research to see meaning where there's no meaning. I will say that. And it also doesn't help the battle against the Bible version conspiracy either, because just because you think you are seeing a meaning that, the esoterics are trying to say this or that, it's very doubtful that they are. You've made up something more than likely, and what you're doing is you're basically just setting yourself up for failure, because what they actually meant is just totally beyond your grasp. And you think that everything relates to the Antichrist. Not everything does. And not everything relates to the mark of the beast either. Anyhow, I'll get off of that for just now. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Oh, so let me see. The idea of the false friends. I didn't like how we kept trying to shift the debate from false friends to, let me be fair. The topic of the debate was not false friends. The topic of the debate was King James Bible readability. So archaic words had their place, but I think a lot of the time in that debate, especially on Dan Hafley's side, the boundary between a word that you don't know and a word that you don't know was crossed constantly, and that was kind of disappointing. So let me see if I can read some of my notes here. I didn't take notes during the debate. I did not. I didn't have the time. I was going back and forth between things, trying to listen to it and doing that. I wasn't terribly distracted, which was good. I was able to fairly pay attention to most of it, so that was very much appreciated. Things worked out pretty well that way. All right, so the most important takeaway, the most important takeaway, I think, from this debate, and from a lot of not the most important, but one of the most important takeaways from this debate, for the Ripplinger fan, like I'm sorry, from what I've been seeing, I'm not so much of a fan anymore. Anyways, okay. The most important takeaway for the Ripplinger fan is that Dan did not use the King James Bible as 5th grade reading level argument, because it's not true. The Flesch-Kincaid grade level indicator, as I understand, does not measure readability. It measures readability in modern speech. It assumes modern speech, and it counts syllables and words. That's how it indicates a grade level, by syllables per word. And as Mark Ward has pointed out, a call above the liver with the kidneys. You're not told what a call is there. What is a call? Go look it up. You have to go look it up in something like the Oxford English Dictionary. The Flesch-Kincaid grade level indicator is not going to tell you the difference between call your mom and ask her if, between that and a call above the liver with the kidneys. It's not going to know the difference. It doesn't it doesn't do readability that way. So when Gail Ripplinger says, oh, it's 5th grade reading level, it's not true. And also where she says, oh, the modern versions always use these big, heavy Latinized words. The King James Bible is always Anglo-Saxon, short little words. That's also not true. Not if you actually evaluate it. On her little chart, yeah, sure, she only includes the ones that she wants to include because they support that part of her book, but it's not the case. We'll get into that more in the future. I've been listening to her presentations on YouTube, these hour and a half, 2 hour long presentations, and as I'm going through them, I'm just thinking, and I'm just like, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, it's like, why are you even speaking? Anyways. So anyhow, flesh Kincaid grade level indicator does not measure readability, but rather syllables to determine difficulty. Gale's so-called analysis was either an innocent misapplication of the system, or it was a willful farce. I doubt that it was a willful farce, like James White says. He believes that what she is doing, she believes is correct and right, what she's doing. I don't think, and I've been listening also to a lot of James White material over the past month, especially the last week or two. And from what I've heard him say about Gale, he has not said that he thinks that she willfully manipulated the facts to reach a point. He probably believes that. Maybe I missed something, maybe I forgot. From what I'm looking at in my famous chapter that I've analyzed, which I am this close to telling you guys exactly what chapter it is, but I have one reason why I'm not. So until that one reason is not the case, then I also need to remember that reason. Okay. So I doubt that it was a willful farce when she used the flesh Kincaid grade level indicator thing, but biggest takeaway for us as Ripplinger fans or what have you, which, like I said, not going to classify myself that way anymore. The 5th grade reading level thing is a lie. It's not true. Okay. The truth about false friends. All right. Here's the truth. They exist. We have seen person after person today. Maybe you haven't. I have. I have seen people all over Facebook, especially, just posting this hate and they just despise Mark Ward for some reason, as if he's like this great enemy of the King James Bible. Instead, he's spreading lies like Daniel Brown, I think, or David Brown. I think it's David Brown, the president of the King James Bible Research Council that hosted the debate. And he did not approve of the debate himself. He said that it gave a platform for, I think the wording was for Mark Ward to spew his lies. And it's like, okay, where is he lying? And countless posts by people that James White would call the cultic King James onlyists, saying Mark Ward is spreading heresy and lies, and he is an enemy of the true gospel, and all of this stuff. And they've said it and said it and said it and said it and said it. And I've gone after some of the people that have said that, and I've been like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, he's an enemy of the King James Bible, and he's evil and all this, and he's a heretic. And I'm like, how? What is he teaching that is heresy? And they'll say, well, if you can't see it, then And it's just like, let me tell you the big problem the people have with Mark Ward and why they hate his guts. Here's the secret, okay? He's right. He's right. And he wants to revise the King James Bible, or at least update it. That is his big crime. He doesn't want people that are convinced about the Textus Receptus to have to give up their Textus Receptus or their King James Bible. He wants people to be able to understand the Bible. A good solution to this might be putting notes in the column that identify these false friends. That might be the most helpful and simplest way to do it. The problem I felt from watching the debate that Dan Hafley and most of the King James Bible believing people that have reacted to it since then, that they are completely resistant to the idea of the King James Bible being updated in wording. I would say that I'm also opposed to it. You may be shocked because I agree with Mark Ward about the false friends thing. This is where something me and Dan Hafley have in common. I would be hesitant to allow the King James Bible to be updated in wording. The only reason, and people have said to me to be careful and to consider the end game. And the end game apparently is to replace the King James Bible with the New International Version. That is the depth of that I am perceiving, that I am being told to look for. That oh, well, he obviously wants to do this and that. So him updating it is just one more step to getting you out of the King James Bible. Do I think that that's the end game? Not really. You guys know, if you follow the channel, I personally think that the major thing, if you guys have any questions tonight, by the way, please, if you want to ask them 4 question marks before and after your comment so it stands out, that will be helpful. I am cautious about wanting the King James Bible to be updated because of the mistrust that me and Dan Hafley would share of the people that would be doing it. But the thing is, if the whole thing is on the up and up, I would be okay with it. That is where I would not probably share a common idea with most King James Bible believing people. Gail, all these other people, especially the folks that believe that the King James Bible is given by inspiration. That idea, I am seeing that the King James Bible carries the inspiration from the original text and everything to the translation, and that inspiration is not lost. I would not agree with the idea that the King James Bible became a fresh inspiration that was not derived from its source texts. I would not say that. I may have at one point, but I would not say now that the King James Bible is a fresh inspiration. I would say that the quality, the spirit of inspiration came through into the translation from its source texts. So, we've said a lot so far. We've been talking for a whole half an hour. So, so that means I would still say that the King James Bible does have inspiration to it. I've just started listening to the interview with James White and Stephen Anderson. Stephen Anderson agrees with James White or not agrees with James White, but does not agree with Gail and such with the ETH endings. ETH endings, as I understand, were something that was preserved by the King James translators. Also, thee and ye, that kind of use was preserved by the King James translators and was actually gone out of style by 1611 and was brought in as something that they felt was a good utility for the translation that they were wanting to achieve and the accuracy and such. So when it comes to the ETH endings, Stephen Anderson would not say that that is a necessary part of the King James Bible. Gail Ripplinger would. I can see her argument, obviously. I've read her books. I've read New Age Bible versions 3 times. I've read An Awe of Thy Word, all 1,200 pages. And I believe it's, 1,300 pages? I forget what it is for hazardous materials. It's been some time. But I've read all of that. And one of the main arguments is that it is better to listen to when you have the ETH endings, because it makes a lot of 1-syllable words into 2-syllable words. Like say is saith, and saith is a lot more pleasing to the ear. Saying milk versus milky to a child is it sounds better. It's more fun. Everything else like this, to have that ETH in there. And I totally get it. And the King James Bible, FYI, just in case you didn't know this, the King James Bible was designed to be read aloud. It was not designed specifically for someone to have a copy, go home and read it to themselves on their bedside or what have you. It was designed with the public reading in mind, so that when you heard it, that was the main way that it was supposed to be communicated. That's how they edited a lot of it as well. Somebody would read it out loud, and they would listen to it, and they would write down their notes for what they would have changed, and they would refine it based on how it sounded. So, also, just so you guys know that. All right. So, the truth about false friends. They exist. Sorry, they do. What do we do with them? Dan Hafley did not attempt... Okay, so Dan Hafley is the guy on your left. Dan did not attempt to push back against this fact that they exist. He actually mentions to Mark that he learned a false friend from him, my favorite false friend of all, the false fiend, Lucifer. That's a controversial view of mine. And to clarify, because I haven't mentioned this, and I'm sorry I'm going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but there is so much to be said. To clarify, I am not saying that I want Lucifer to be changed to Daystar. People reading a post where I say that I don't believe that Lucifer is a new age translation that has infiltrated the new versions, that I don't believe. That I have questioned. That I have looked into the word Lucifer and where it came from and how it is used and all these different things and how it's used in the Bible. And there's more that I'm hoping to find out soon about the Hebrew word. It's kind of hard for me to get into all that because I don't know Hebrew, but I'm working on it. It's not. The beginning of New Age Bible versions was the spook that Gail Ripplinger got when apparently some person from college got Jesus Christ confused with Lucifer in Isaiah 14. And that was basically the starting point of New Age Bible versions. And turns out that most of the reference works and everything that Gail threw out the window is because they didn't agree with her on the definition of Lucifer. Hey, Nick, how's it going? Are you Pakistan, right? Are you still in Pakistan? Let us know. We'll be praying for you. Guys, be praying for him. He's out on a big trip. He's gone from Australia to Pakistan. He's so crazy. He may be back, though. I don't know. And I'll try to get to your guys' comments soon. I see there are 9 comments so far. And 13 viewers. Very nice. I like it. So, good interaction. Dan did not attempt to push back against the fact that false friends exist, nor did he attempt to use Gail Ripplinger's claim that the KJV built-in of the King James Bible's built-in dictionary. Approximately 300 or more of more or less subtle... Okay, hang on a second. Approximately 300 or more of more or less subtlety exist in the KJV and are not detected like difficult, archaic, or obsolete words. So, in other words, you have about 300 false friends, and sometimes they're more overt, where you're just like, oh, well, obviously. Other times they're not, like Lucifer, the false fiend, and Mansion, which is also a false friend from what I have seen, and from what I have known for years, well before Mark. I just was resistant to it because I was King James only, but I had learned about the idea about mansions and how the Bible uses that term and things. I had learned about that back in high school. So, and I wasn't King James only until I had gone to college, and I didn't go to a King James only college. It was because I had learned about King James onlyism from Ken Hovind and did more research on it while at college and arrived at the conclusion that, you know, King James only was the way to go. That's how I got there. Approximately 300 more of more or less subtlety. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Dan Wallace mentions the 300 which have changed meaning since 1611 in the Ankerberg program. And Sam Gipp's answer to that was, oh, well, shambles used to mean marketplace. And now shambles is you know, and yeah, you can figure that out. That's something that has changed meaning. Or let is obvious, you know, but There's a lot of them that you would have no idea at all. I encourage you to go to Mark Ward's website. I forget the link. I don't think there's any way I can add it to the screen here. I've shared the link before. If you watch the debate between Dan and Mark, the QR code is brought up several times where you guys can take the quiz and everything. And that would be helpful if you would do that. That would be awesome. All right, so the main KJV only arguments. This is what I saw brought to the table by Dan. That intelligibility is overrated. And not everyone needs to understand the Bible. That might be a little bit of a harsh way of putting it, but taken down to brass tacks, it seemed like the first bit of his argument was, the whole Bible's not meant to be understood by everyone anyways, so I mean, my goodness. But the thing is that we don't need an extra thing standing in the way. The Bible talks about how, there are spiritual things that are hard for the natural man to understand. Obviously. The problem is why are we bringing in or allowing it to stay these difficulties to be an extra hindrance? And by the way, being spiritually minded does not teach you false friends. There are plenty of people that have gone and been pastors forever, spiritual giants that have completely misapplied different verses because they're unaware of false friends. By and by. What does by and by mean? In the sweet, by and by. Oh, by and by. I'll get to that by and by. Okay, it means after a while, when I get around to it. Right? No. 1611, it meant right now. By and by, is basically the same idea as betimes, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's like right now. That's what by and by meant. The end is not right now. The end is not by and by. And I would also say that the end is not getting you to use the NIV. I think that one of the main things that we're missing as King James Bible believers is that the idea of changing the Bible to introduce the characteristics necessary for a New World Order Bible, that a lot of that is being covered up by the furor that has erupted because of King James onlyism and its spread. I think that Gale actually, with New Age Bible versions, may have done the powers that be a service. Because now everybody is looking at these different things that end up just not being factual, instead of, we're looking to change keywords, like Dr. Richard Day said in the New Order of Barbarians tapes. They want to change the keywords slightly and then more dramatically from their original meaning, so that the Bible itself, not any particular version, so that the Bible will be more friendly to a New World Order religion. You guys can watch our channel trailer. We get into a little bit more detail about the New Order of Barbarians in that. All right, so there's no reason to have those unnecessary barriers, and you guys can check out the debate. I think Mark Ward's response to the idea of the Bible is just hard to understand as it is, and all this. His response to that, I believe, was excellent. I don't remember what it was, but at the time I was like, it was excellent, so I wrote it down. Okay, so the solution to false friends is to teach everybody false friends. Oh, look at this. Mark just stood up and he taught us the false friends. That's great. Now we don't have to revise the Bible. Now we don't have to say, all right, King James Bible, you used to say by and by, we're going to change it to immediately. Blasphemy. Absolute, total, sacrilegious blasphemy, correct? have we stopped to ask ourselves why it would be? Because that's exactly what it means. Oh, but God said he was preserved the words, and it's the words, words, words. I agree. That's where we also agree. The thing is how do you say that the King James Bible's words are exactly fixed, static, inspired, untouchable ever by anybody at any point in history? Because Dan Hafley did say that he did believe that in the future there would be godly people that would be prompted by the Holy Spirit to revise the King James Bible when such a revision, because of language changes, becomes necessary, because of the language changes. He said that it is possible. But of course, they have to be inspired to do it. Okay, so Dan Hafley thinks that the King James Bible was inspired as well. That's kind of uncharacteristic of the Research Council, but okay. Teach everyone the obsolete senses. All right. Even non-Christians, so they can read the Bible without having this unnecessary hindrance. And I'll tell you what, I had no idea what will worship was. I had no idea what will worship was until Mark made a video about will worship. And my wife looked it up the other day. I was like, what does will worship mean? After I had learned. And she's just like, oh, well. And I go do something, and I come back, and she's like, it means self-made religion. And I'm just like, you Googled it, didn't you? And she's like, yeah. So anyways, she had to take the ice pick of Google and break the ice cube that meaning was in. That would have been unnecessary if it read like a modern translation, but we could never do that because the modern translations are what? Satanic, right? Have we let's reevaluate the evidence. That's what I'm saying. Let's reevaluate the evidence that it is satanic. Please, let's do that. Peter Ruckman said it. Gail Ripplinger said it a bazillion times in thousands and thousands of pages. And I would be the first one to agree with it if I thought it was true. I've agreed with it for 15 years. You guys know. And going back and looking at it and evaluating different things, I think that Gail was onto it in some parts, especially where she talked about the idea of more religions being more connected with different phrases. I'm not quite sure about the whole the Christ thing, but I do get different places where she talked about it. But the problem is that those parts are so actually infrequent compared to the other parts, where it's just like where I think it's that verse in Colossians that takes out through his blood or what have you, as we say it all the time. I'm not up on my manuscript evidence that much, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But like the majority text doesn't have it in there. The Textus Receptus does, so it's in the King James Bible. And Gail says in a public program that the reason why it was taken out is because it was too Christian. She said that to the Baileys on Action 60s. And Mrs. Bailey actually was like, are you sure that that's why that was done? And she just asked the question. And Gail's like, it was taken out because it was too Christian. And she's just like, but you know that? And Gail's like, oh well, it's not in their manuscripts, that it's not in their. And it's like, yeah, we know. Anyways, don't want to get off on that rabbit trail right now. We might talk about that later. And also for the people that hate dynamic equivalence, I highly recommend that you watch. You can order the DVDs or you can watch most of it on YouTube. I may sometime get permission to actually put it up on YouTube. I don't know. I'll have to talk to the Ankerberg show about that. But the discussion that they had on King James Onlyism on the Ankerberg show was stellar, and it was quite revealing. I wish that Ruckman and Ripplinger would have both been there. It would have been much, much better. It could have gone for a whole another 3 hours, especially with Gale. Probably 7 or 8 hours if Gale was involved, because everybody has to hear about the Titanic. if you know, you know. But it would have been much better, I think, if they would have just showed up. But they didn't do that, which kind of sent the wrong message, I think. So anyways, on the Ankerberg show, they mentioned, I believe it was the NKJV guy, Farstad, I believe his name was. He mentions how in the Bible, and James White mentioned this as well on a program, that the King James Bible has dynamic equivalencies in it. We know this. Easter is a dynamic equivalency. Brian Ross, he's in here. He wrote a book about Easter, actually, a small one, which is right there, I think. I think it's right there. Okay. So I do have it. It's over there someplace. I don't have, with 4 kids, I don't have a lot of time to do bookshelf maintenance, but that's a whole big old corporate, hostile takeover is going to be coming around here pretty soon, I fear. Yeah. So anyways, the Farstad, he mentioned that in the King James Bible, where Christ says, or no, not Christ doesn't say it. I think it's Luke. Mentions how the thief, how Christ was being mocked by the Pharisees and the Jews that were there and everything. And I don't know if the music in the background is being distracting. If it is, please let me know. I'll turn it down or I'll turn it off. Okay, so Farstad said that where the King James Bible says that the thieves cast the same reviling, they cast the same in his teeth. That, I think, is a correct translation, and especially in 1611, that's the way that it should be said, and it makes good literature. It does. Not saying that it's not inspired or it doesn't carry the quality of inspiration forward into the receptor language, not saying that at all, but it is a dynamic equivalency because the word there in Greek, there is a single word, and it means derided. So the thieves derided him. Oh, well, that's a hard, evil, Latinized word from the Catholic Church, as Gale might say. No, really. Okay, so cast the same in his teeth is all simple words, but guess what? It's still a dynamic equivalence. And there's no word for teeth. There's no word for cast. There's no word for same. There's no word for any of it. It's simply derided, and that's why the modern versions put it in there. Most of them. All right, so we could teach everybody the obsolete senses, even non-Christians. How are we going to do that? How many KJV onlyists are you hiring? Because honestly, if I was being paid to teach people the false friends or what have you, I could do that. I would probably prefer doing that to working in a hardware store. I'd even do it on YouTube. And that's one of the things we're actually aiming for, to go full-time with this channel. Part-time would be great. Part-time here, part-time doing photography, or even the hardware store, that'd be great. But we can't get there without you. $7 a month if you guys become a co-conspirator. That would be amazing. Head on over to the link in the description, buymeacoffee.com/Joseph Armstrong, and you can help us toward that goal. And I appreciate those of you that have bitten the bullet. You are amazing. You keep this channel running. You keep it running. You guys are amazing. All right. Are we hiring King James onlyists to do this? Is this how this is happening? Is it going to replace missionary efforts? How big is this going to be? Because we are absolutely opposed to making to changing the wording, because not there's two different ideas coming together into one paranoia, I think. First is the guys that all they think about is somebody is going to accidentally or maliciously slip something in that we miss, and that would be terrible. Okay, there's those guys that think that. Then there's the other guys that are like, you can't change one single little thing in the King James Bible or else you're going to hell. Anything at all. Like, no. Semicolons, colons, no, nothing. Zip, nada. Where that same King James Bible has been changed an awful lot of times. Brian Ross is in the chat too. Ask him about it. He knows a lot more about it than I do. And then there's the guys that kind of cross over that are like, they say, oh no, I'm suspicious, but really they just don't want the King James Bible to ever be changed because then people are going to hell for it, and they'd be going to hell if they did it. So yeah, anyways, that's the situation that we're at right now. And one of the reasons I like our channel, and please subscribe if you're not subscribed. One of the things that we do is we think about endgames here. We think about the trends in the Bible version controversy. We do deep research into the claims of authors that speak to this subject. We do deep research into symbolism, different characters that are involved, like Westcott and Hort. David Daniels is coming out with a book pretty soon about Westcott and Hort. It's going to be good. I'm sure it's going to be good. Everything he writes is amazing. Not saying that he's right about everything. Brian Ross is also in the chat. He could talk to you about Sinaiticus all night. Probably a 6th century document. Simonides, I'm starting to not believe an awful lot, but that's the debate I think that could be had between David Daniels and Brian Ross at some point in the future. That would be stellar. That'd be great. Okay. Just a total nerd moment right there. You're with me so far, so admit it. You're a nerd too. Alrighty. So, get out a dictionary, you sucker. My goodness, just stop being lazy. That's the other thing. Common dictionaries often fail to include obsolete uses of words. Like Mark used in the debate as an illustration, the word chambering. Chambering and wantonness, they kind of define each other in that context, and we know a little bit more about what chambering is from that verse now, don't we? But the thing is chambering, somebody runs across that, and they might not be able to just figure it out just then, just being like, chambering. Okay, so dictionary. Putting a bullet in the gun so it can be sent out the end with explosive force. That's chambering because you're putting the bullet in the chamber. Well, as Mark points out in the debate, Paul was for our Second Amendment rights, amen. But that's not what he meant. So, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to carry around the OED, which is, what, a 20-volume set or something? I forget, but it's huge. Or you can get the 2-volume set where you have to use a microscope to read the letters. You can do that. Or you could subscribe to the OED online and get much more information than the paper version will give you. But then you also run the risk of the Jesuits who are controlling the entire thing from behind the scenes, which, sorry, but that's actually correct. But there's problems and a hollow earth. So we'll talk about that some other time. Common dictionaries. And I'm not mocking that. Okay, I'm not mocking the idea of the Jesuits thing by throwing in hollow earth. If I was wanting to mock something, I would say the earth is flat. That's how I would mock something. The hollow earth idea, you haven't listened to enough Mr. Mythos before, you haven't listened to enough Mr. Mythos, and once you have, you will believe in the hollow earth, sorry. Flat earth, I've entertained the idea, and I've done a lot of looking into it, and I'm sorry, it just doesn't pan out. We can fight about it later. All right. Get out a dictionary. Nonsense. Are you going to carry the OED set and a King James Bible? Is the OED now your 67th book of the Bible? You've got the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the OED. Okay. So it all just becomes so much of a problem with the whole idea of the dictionary thing. A lot of the time, yeah, you can look it up in a dictionary and it is just fine and you get something from it and it's great. But the problem is if I take the Webster right there, that's laying on the ground, and I crack it open and I look up the word mansion, more than likely I'm going to get, oh, it's a lavish dwelling place, a lavish standalone dwelling place that millionaires, not even millionaires anymore, billionaires can afford. Unless they live in California and then they're sleeping in a tent. And that's what you get. But you don't get how the term was used in 1611, which is very important. And I'm sorry, your 1828 Webster Dictionary is not going to help you every time. It's also pretty far removed from 1611. And it just kind of makes you want to strangle the people that work at the University of Toronto because they took down the search feature from the lexicon of English, of early modern English, and you just don't know why, and it's just I don't like two things that have happened recently. Internet Archive has been hacked, and the lexicon of early modern English has removed its search function before I even learned how to use it. Brian Ross, you can relate. And no, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave it for now. We'll talk about it some other time. This is maroon. Or no, what is this? Scarlet. I forget what True Classic calls it, but anyways, it's not purple. That's the point. Okay. Anyway, we're moving on. All right. So common dictionaries often fit a blah blah blah. All right. Would you update Shakespeare? That was the other major argument. So there's basically four major arguments. Intelligibility is overrated. Everyone, we should just be we should just teach it everybody then they're false friends. Get out a dictionary. And would you update Shakespeare? Those are basically your King James only arguments to this point. Maybe there's more, but those are the basic ideas. If there's more, please post them in the chat so they'll be visible, or in the comments if you're watching after the fact. Shakespeare, FYI, for people that say Shakespeare all the time, have you ever read Shakespeare? It's like, oh, it is, first of all, it is amazing. This guy was a genius if it was just one guy and if it wasn't Francis Bacon. And, okay, we're going to stay away from the Holworth stuff for now, Joseph. Okay. So, would you update Shakespeare? Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. You're going to have to update Shakespeare or you're going to read it and be like, what is going on? Because it just takes so much. It's just like, and please, let's pray that the Bible never becomes the level of difficulty that Shakespeare is. Shakespeare is it's a beast. Hang on a second. All right, so I gotta go in a second. I'm not finishing the broadcast. There's much more to talk about. So let's see. Oh, and Brian Ross, we're gonna be responding to your video that you made too. It wasn't bad, and you had some good thoughts. I thought your thoughts were good thoughts. But I did want to point something out. Oh, poop. Where did I leave off? Oh, yeah. Shakespeare is even harder to read than the KJV. It is not just because of how they spoke in 1611 either. My goodness. If you just took Shakespeare and put it in modern words, I mean, first of all, it would lose a lot of its flavor, which is one reason why I have never read an updated version of John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. I believe I've read it 2 or 3 times, and no, thank you. I'll take the original. Same thing with a lot of other different books that are like, you know, updated frequently. No thanks. The original for me, that'd be great. Reader's Digest, blah. But I mean, updating it, nope, no thanks. Especially audio, where the impediment of having to read these older words isn't there. You're just listening to them and you can just kind of like keep rolling. One thing I will say, Josephus, the what's the guy's name? Whiston or whatever. William Whiston, I think his name was. I'll take him. Modern translations, you have the distrust, and then you also have the modern wording, and it's like, Beowulf, I don't remember the translator of it, but I'll take the old translator as well. I'll have to look that up because now I'm curious. So, but yeah, the modern updates, like I had a copy with like a guy all in mail on the front of it, and started reading that, and I was like, bleh. No, I'll take the older translation of it, not the original, please. But that'll come up in a second. I want you guys to think for in a few minutes. If somebody wanted us to only use the translation, and I'm not trying to make a parallel to saying, oh, the King James is this hard to read. I'm not. For sake of argument and for sake of thinking about how people are arguing the false friends things in modern versions and such. How would you defend your church or your family or what have you? How would you answer someone that wanted you only to use the Wycliffe translation? Just the Wycliffe translation, because it was truly inspired, and the archaic words, there's not that many of them, you can still read it, you know, such like this. How would you answer a Wycliffe onlyite? So let me type that out in the banners real quick. We're going to create a banner. How would you answer a Wycliffe? I forget. Onlyist. How would you answer a Wycliffe onlyist? And I will be right back. You guys are very patient. I love it. Thank you very much for staying tuned. So, how would you do it? How would you answer a Wycliffe onlyist? And I'm not just saying the translation part of it. More so focused on the idea of the archaic senses and words and such like this. And you can still read it. You can still make it out. But we'll discuss that in a little bit and why I'm asking that question. So, let's keep going. Modern versions, even TR-based ones, make serious changes. And they do, I think. This should not hinder an update, which doesn't do so. Now, this is one of the things people argue against using an updated translation, because we can look at it and we can go, oh, I don't like that seed was changed to descendants and stuff like this, like Dave mentioned, or Dan mentions. But the problem is what happens if you update it and it doesn't do that? Say everything else in the translation is fine, but there's just one problem. What if you had a translation that didn't do that one problem? A lot of the time, the people in the middle, like I talked about, that cross those two different reasons to oppose an update, it just turns out Actually, no. I'm sorry. Just, if I'm going to be honest, no. You can never change the King James Bible in one little bit or else you're going to hell. Or something else serious. Basically, the King James Bible was inspired in 1611 and it was a brand new inspiration. And thank goodness that happened because nobody had the real Bible for a long time. Ever since the originals actually were burned or destroyed or buried or whatever happened, moth-eaten. Yeah, I'm sure that they were not used in anybody's parakeet cage. That I can guarantee. Well, more than likely. So, this should not hinder an update which doesn't have the problems, should it? James White also makes the keen observation that with such a mindset, we are allowing our perceptions of biblical theology to influence which reading is correct in a translation and which are not, regardless of where the evidence lies. That's huge. We, as King James Bible believers, I've done it for a long time. There are places that I would still say that this is the case, where modern versions make something that I would say affects doctrine slightly, doesn't make the Bible version teach something wrong, but maybe it doesn't say the deity of Christ like the King James does or something like this. Okay. Problem is, and we're going to get to the flood thing in a second, we're going to use that as our transition between this debate and another debate coming soon to a YouTube near you. Do I have a Kleenex in here? Ah! The saints be praised. Alrighty. So, hour and 18 minutes, not bad. We are allowing our perceptions of biblical theology to influence how the scripture will read. So, say that how we understand a verse teaches the Trinity. What if our understanding is not backed up by the Greek text, and it was never the intention of the King James translators for said verse to teach the deity of Christ to begin with? We would protect that reading because, it's a way I've used to defend the deity of Christ from Scripture, and you'll never take it away from me. Okay. I happen to be friends with a New American Standard Bible Version translator who strongly believes in the deity of Christ. Was he out to destroy the deity of Christ with his translation? No. In fact, you may not know this, but one of the major complaints that was given, I believe, to Kenneth Barker from the New American, from the New International Translation, New International Version, sorry. Political correctness and all that. Got to get the right pronouns in there, right? So one of the major criticisms that he had of the NIV is that it was too strong on the deity of Christ in certain passages. And that the deity of Christ was overemphasized by the text in general. That's fascinating to me, especially with how Gale and people like this say, they downplay the deity of Christ over and over and over and over by removing the word Lord. That's how it's being done. That's what? And in some of those cases, you find out it's not even in the majority text. or something else like this. And it's just like, okay, but wait a second, we're supposed to be going for the majority text. Guys, well, let me tell you something. I'm doing a lot of research into a lot of different things, and I'm struggling. There are some parts where I'm just like, the King James only defense, or the King James only people that are reacting to the criticism or whatever, and not even a criticism of the King James, a criticism of what they believe, and that's it. Not even saying the King James Bible has an error or whatever in it, just like normal things, and they're just flying off the handle over it. It's just like, I am struggling to continue calling myself a King James only Bible believer. I am having a hard time. Okay? I will say it up front. And there have been many times recently where I've just been like, are we this dumb? Are we this rude? Are we this shallow in our research? Where we just call, like Will Kinney, where he called James White a liar for saying that there was no Greek manuscript support behind a certain verse, and oh, well, there's 2 manuscripts and Jack Mormon supplies those, and James White mentions them in his footnotes, and he contradicts himself and all this other stuff. And James White filled him in on when those manuscripts were created, and it was after the Textus Receptus, and they were more than certainly, copied from the Textus Receptus in those places. Call him an inconsistent liar, child of the devil like Tex Mars or what have you. How and why? It's just a lot. And like I've said, the Bible version conspiracy idea, we've gotten a lot of comments tonight. Yeah. We're here to expose the Bible version conspiracy. If I don't end up stroking your King James only ego like you want me to, I'm sorry. If I end up, going contrary to such and such thing, I'm also sorry. If you may perceive me as not being scholarly, okay. I'm trying to focus on a question. Is there a conspiracy behind the modern Bible version translations and stuff like this? And where are we correct and where are we incorrect? And me going back and evaluating King James only arguments, main reason why I'm doing that is because I want to use those very same arguments and I want to see how they pan out. I want to be familiar with the background of these arguments, why they're being used, how they're being used, what text says what where, before I start using them, because I don't want to be an idiot and use something that's not true. And I also want to be able to say, something more than just throw it in your face. The deity of Christ was removed in this verse. I don't want to be like that. And I hope you don't want to be like that either. And the thing is that I think King James onlyism, like I've said before, is a psyop in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways. Not that it's entirely incorrect. Not that I'm saying it's a heresy or anything else like this. But the thing is there are some things in there that aren't taught in the Bible, FYI. But that aside, if there is a major push going on from the powers that be to change the Bible to fit a new world religion, guess who's crying wolf? Guess who's making fools out of themselves? Guess who's making themselves look like complete and utter, just, not even foolish, just nasty kind of people. I like to have it on 20. There we go. Just making ourselves look like how do you even find words? Just nasty, crotchety, old people that just hate everybody. Who's doing a real fine job of that? And who are the ones that are talking the most about the Bible being changed to fit a new world order religion? Guys, if we're not straight on our facts, we're going to be barking up the wrong tree. And I'll throw this out there too. How are King James Bible false friends? How are the words that you don't know, how are they being used to manipulate you? There's a lot to consider, guys. There is a lot more to consider, I think, than Westcott and Hort had verses removed from the Bible. And them modern translations remove the deity of Christ. There is a lot more going on. And that's what I'm looking forward to talking about on this channel. So if you haven't subscribed, hit that button. Smash it. And get a smartphone screen or whatever. All right. Let's not use our theology to choose the correct rendering of what the Bible should say, regardless of the evidence. Now, there's also a danger there, of, we're just going to accept the less theological reading, just like Westcott and Hort said, with the idea of, the less theological or doctrinally sound or whatever reading is the more likely, because the more likely one to be added is the one that's more doctrinally sound or what have you. And I see where that's coming from. I see the logic in that, but there's also a problem there with how it may have been changed, because that did happen in certain places at certain times, but the evidence for that is lacking. A D.A. Waite even had no real answer for James White when James White asked him about point blank, like, okay, where's the evidence for this Gnostic change to the Bible then, And also, another huge thing that I would say is we have verses removed and stuff like this, and a lot of them do have, doctrinal points to them and things, and they're usually pretty major doctrines that are just taught in the Bible and are just believed by Christians as it is, like, Trinity, salvation, deity of Christ, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So removing the verses did what? It was saying that they were removed anyways. I get it, okay. How did taking out this or that really change things for the Gnostic? Like, okay, you're a Gnostic guy, and you're just like, I'm going to make an evil Bible. And you go and you take out a few words and verses and change some things around, but you didn't do a real good job. You like there's one verse in what is it? The one in Acts. I think it's Acts. And then the one in Romans. It's like, okay, it's like, why? Why would those be removed? We talk about those verses all the time, and oh, look at the wave the 1 John 5:7 banner, wave the Acts 8:37 banner all day long, but then the verses that are not there, or the verses that are added or whatever, that are just like, there's no significance to this. It's like, we never talk about them. Why? Because it's embarrassing for the idea that somebody took them out, when we see verses that are also missing that have hardly any import whatsoever. I'll have to make videos about those at some point, because it's just like, well, that was a pointless omission. Like, hey, Marcion, did you take that verse out? Yeah, I took that verse out. Oh, the Christians are going to be scrambling now. I don't see why you took it out, though. I mean, the verse wasn't a problem. It's not a big deal. Why did you take it out? Oh, you just wait and see. You just wait and see. Okay, Mark. All right. Yeah, he's going out of business. He's a few fries short of a Happy Meal. So we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out eventually. When we all get to heaven and all this, then we'll find out all of it, I guess. But We should, Nick, I know you. You love to do the 5-hour podcasts. Me, I'm lucky if I can hit 4. I'm pushing it. Thing is, I would love to see you do a show sometimes. You know more about this stuff way more than I do. I would love to see a show sometime where you talk about insignificant Bible changes. Like where it's just like this verse is changed in modern versions, but it, it's like, okay, doesn't matter, moving on. Ooh, the exciting verse, 1 John 5:7. That would be fascinating. Maybe you've already done something like that. That would be incredible, though. And then I also want to know what happened. Like, what's the textual history? And just like, that would be just total nerd amazingness for me. Anyways, got your back. There's a little bit of content creation fodder for you. Gail's misidentification of Lucifer. It's comparing him to Venus. It's literally comparing Nebuchadnezzar to Venus. It's plain and clear, especially in the Wycliffe translation. Oh boy, is it clear in the Wycliffe translation. Read that sometime. That it's comparing him to the planet Venus, what we would call the morning star in modern English. And yeah, Gail, instead, she takes it and she's like, oh no, that's Satan. And she allows her theological bias, her lack of research into the term Lucifer, to influence what she is standing for the King James translation on. And I've reached out to one guy. Thank you, James Snap. I've reached out to one guy that he's in contact with. I haven't heard anything back yet, but I'm sure the guy is immensely busy. But I would love to know how the old Latin texts, how they render the New Testament verses that have day star, morning star, and morning star. 2 in Revelation and 1 in, I believe, 1 Peter. I would love to see that. I've got to make slides for all this stuff. I've got the software. So many things that I need to do. I've got to get more of a list. I've got to be much more structured than I am, because with the chaos that happens on the other side of that doorway, I just need to be like the most organized person on earth to get anything done these days. It's like, so anywho, I don't know why I don't know why it's scrolling to the bottom all the time now. That's weird. I'm just going to refresh this. Reload. And we're going to dismiss that. Okay. So, this idea about following our theological bias, regardless of the evidence, I think is serious in certain cases, and also can be serious to ignore some basic Christian theological biases because, facts. Let me get the comments gone. I need my brand stuff back. Alrighty. So let's get up to, I've got a lot of notes on this, so I'm going to try to hurry this along as much as I can. This observation is correct, and the implications of it are very serious, especially in the light of Orthodox corruptions of Scripture, which have happened. Because not all Orthodox corruptions are in the King James Bible. There are Orthodox corruptions. I can't think of them offhand. I have heard about them, I think, just, by the hearing of the ear or what have you. But there are Orthodox corruptions of Scripture that support doctrine, but they aren't accepted into the Textus Receptus because they just simply aren't they don't hold water. I would love to see a good study on that. I am planning on watching the James White Bart Ehrman debate, where I'm sure that comes up. I'm looking forward to it. It justifies the skeptics of Christianity, because the skeptics are like, oh, you just orthodoxized the Bible. It used to be this way, you know, and then all the orthodox stuff was just added into the Bible. And it's just like, no. But there are some that have been. In certain cases, at certain points, not saying that those are what are in the King James. At this point. Still researching. If you guys want to help me out, send me stuff. Send me, articles, whatever. BibleVersionConspiracy.com. You can reach me through the website there, or you can message me if we're friends on Facebook. Not hard. If it seems like I'm ignoring you on Messenger, it's because I haven't checked my Messenger requests. So, leave a comment on something and let me know. YouTube is a good way of letting me know. Let's see. So, especially in the light of Orthodox corruptions of Scripture, this justifies the skeptics, or gives them fodder, and the Bible to okay, and the Bible to write it off as a book which has been brought into line with Christian theology over the centuries. Of course, the opposite is true and equally serious. If the true text ends up being anti-Christian, the true text ends up being anti-Christian, then we don't want that, obviously. And in harmony with Gnosticism. Of course, there are people that say that the modern version texts are brought into harmony with Gnosticism. I forget her name, but she wrote a book called Gnosticism that the D.A. Waite used to sell. I have it back here. I haven't read it yet. Written by a lady, which apparently kept publishing, even though the Ripplinger thing, but it wasn't the D.A. Waite stuff. Anyways, we'll talk about that some other time. Of course, the opposite of blah, 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 blah. So far, I have not seen any good evidence that the KJV only from KJV only proponents that this is the case, saying that Gnosticism is the underlying factor of the modern critical text. Because, problem, why did they leave so much if this was intentional? And what is with the this is pointless changes, Already voiced that. D.A. Waite and Michael Holland both tried to defend this idea, and in my opinion, when they debated James White, when D.A. Waite debated James White, when is it Michael Holland, the guy that wrote Crowned with Glory? In my opinion, they both failed in their debates with James. Just from listening to them. Sorry. So far, I have not seen any good evidence, blah, blah, blah. It failed in my opinion. If you would be interested to see these discussions, please let me know, and I can prepare them to be reposted on our channel. I probably will at some point, because it's important for those. It's important, I think, for King James Bible believers to be able to listen to somebody like Holland and James White just, debate in a civil format where nobody's screaming and yelling and calling each other heretics and crap like this, which we don't need. That's not a debate. That's just I want you to officially give me license to shout at that person over there. Thank you very much. Something we don't need, thanks. If we're going to have a debate, we need to have a discussion. We need to have people that, obviously, two opposing viewpoints, hopefully a winner, so that we know which viewpoint is more likely to be true based on we have two equally credentialed individuals here. And also a discussion where both of the people are willing to admit error where it is pointed out and where it is found, and arrive at the truth simultaneously. even if that truth contradicts what they may have said at the beginning. That's what we need. All right, so here's where we get to one major thing. The one major thing that anybody took away from the not King James debate, the readability debate. Major thing is Mark Ward says it's a sin to give a KJV to children. And yeah, he did say that. But, and Christian McShaffrey reposted that and stuff. Hey, Chris, if you're watching this, can I call you Chris? Christian, I'm not sure how you prefer. Anyways. How about Chris? Or maybe just Chin? I know. Chrissy. No. That's trying to play off of Robin Williams from Genie there. Aladdin. So anyways, he is working on a video. Mark Ward is working on a video. And he will be doing a video with Dan Hafley where he discusses some different things in the debate and where they clarify some points. Thomas Holland. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. I don't know why I said Michael. It's been a long time since I've seen his book, but I have never actually purchased his book or read his books. I saw articles by him a long time ago. That was a long time ago. All right, so Mark is going to be making a video specifically dealing, as from my perception, he's going to be making a video specifically dealing with the idea that he said it is a sin for the KJV to be given to a child. I can understand why he would say that based on, what he has found as far as false friends go. I would not say that would necessarily be justified, and I would also want to add a little bit of clarification myself. And some qualification, because where he uses the passages for him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. The thing with using that is, I think that sin there in that passage it could be taken as a false friend, sort of. I'm not sure if it would qualify as a false friend in this case, but if it's under the sense of like a transgression, or not even a transgression, not like an iniquity, where like, oh man, you are such an evil person for giving the King James Bible to a child. That's what we hear when we hear, oh, it's a sin to give the King James Bible to a child. That's what we hear. That, okay, if you never sinned in your entire life, but you gave a King James Bible to a kid, oh, God's going to send you to hell for that one. Yep. Like a bullet. That's what we hear when we hear him say that. I would put that along the lines of, okay, you're out living your life. And, you have a conversation with somebody just out of the blue about God or the Bible or something like this. And, maybe you're just like, maybe it's not the right time to start, preaching to them or whatever. They seem to be aware of the gospel and stuff like this. But maybe your judgment was wrong. Maybe you should have witnessed to them. Maybe you didn't. And that would be him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not. That would be a sin to not do it, sort of, I guess, in that sense. But it wouldn't be, and just, you are a perverted individual. You're not, it doesn't show any darkness in your heart to give the King James Bible to a kid. It doesn't show any darkness to your heart to not witness to everybody you ever look at in your entire life. So I would see what he is saying. This is what I'm predicting that the video is probably going to mention, is that, and you four that are still listening to this, you guys are troopers. You guys all get gold stars for all of you. Nice. I would say that it's going to be more of a sin of accountability, not a sin of wickedness. So once you know that there are so many false friends in the King James Bible, but you can't give an NKJV or a simplified KJV or a KJV-ER or a KJV-21 or Nick Sayers, I believe it's KJ-23 at this point. You can't do that because you're King James only. And you're letting your King James only tradition keep you from giving a King James Bible, anything but a King James Bible, to a child. There's a hair floating through the air. That is where I think Mark is coming from. And I get it. But the thing is that just saying it, he thinks it's a sin for the King James Bible to be given to a child. And how that even came up in the debate, Dan Hafley mentioned it toward the end, and it's like the only thing anybody's had to talk about since then. It's embarrassing. It's wrong. There's so much in that debate that is being completely ignored by people, and they're focusing on that one little maybe 40-second or something like this fragment in the very end of the debate. I think that's really sad. Personally, I find that very sad. Especially where we're just willing to write him off as an evil individual who hates God and the Bible and is a heretic and all this stuff. We're going to crucify him on one little statement and ignore the truth that even Dan was willing to recognize. And by the way, the video that that Mark Ward and Dan Hafley are going to be making in the future, from what Mark posted a few days ago, it was Hafley's idea to make the video. Because he sees King James only people all over the place, ripping them to shreds for no reason. And he's just like, this is ridiculous. We need to answer some of this nonsense. Because it's nonsense. So he is working on a video. Okay. As I see it, the only thing that you ever did was give it, okay, we talked about all that, blah, 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 blah. Mark's opinion, okay, sense indeed of trans. Okay, so we pretty much covered all that. Post-debate reactions. I've watched a couple of post-debate reactions. One that I want to talk about with Brian Ross, if Brian is even still on here. I don't know if he is or not. Brian made a video where basically he went after Mark Ward, talking about using Miles Smith, where he wrote the preface to the King James Bible, and talking about translation, breaking open the kernel, so that, breaking open the shell so we can eat the kernel, and, just different things like this. Taking from the original language, donor language, as Brian calls it, to the receptor language, English. That's what the barrier that's being crossed. And yes, in context, that is exactly what Miles Smith is talking about. Mark Ward wants to use his statements to justify the idea of bringing the King James Bible into modern English so people can understand. Personally, this is my opinion. If the translators were alive today, they would agree with Mark Ward. They'd be like, guys, your language hath changed. Update our words so that people can understand it. And they never actually said plowboy to my knowledge. Tyndale did, but I don't know if the King James translators did. Maybe they did. I don't know. Brian Ross will tell me later. Because he likes to correct every little thing, and I love it. Thank you, Brian. I love it. Keep it up. And Mark Ward applies it to translation. And Brian Ross takes most of the video to make it clear that they were not talking about readability issues within the same language. They were talking about from one language to another. And it's like, yes, and that is also how it's being used in the Bible. Yes, that is the exact application that they were going for. The problem is they were not dealing with readability issues in 1611 or in the first century. Nobody was writing that way. They were talking about producing content right there on the spot with somebody that's prophesying in an unknown tongue and translating a Bible and polishing it, not updating archaic words. Because editions, translations of the Bible had come out recently before they did. So with your modern Bible translation controversy and the readability debate, I think that there is a clear application because, as Mark Ward says in the debate, edification requires intelligibility. If you have a verse that is written and has a false friend in it or has something that you don't understand, guess what you have to do? If you go to a dictionary, you have to break open the kernel or break open the shell so you can eat the kernel yourself. Or you have to go read Mark Ward's book, or maybe you don't. And you never find out that there was a false friend right in that verse that made you misinterpret it. Well, that's sad. That's sad for that to be the case, isn't it? Didn't have to be that way, but there's the King James only person who gave them the King James Bible and told them that that was the inspired word of God and that to change it would send you to hell. So that's that. So interesting. I think that Brian, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you on this. I think that Mark Ward's application of, 1 Corinthians 14 and Miles Smith, I think his application of that was warranted. He may not have used it as precisely as he probably could have. Maybe not as precisely as you would have liked, because I know that you love to be precise. That's one of the things I love about you. But the thing is that it does have application. Greek would not be intelligible to somebody that only read English, and there is less of it. Like Greek, like they say, it's Greek to me. All of it is unintelligible. But when you have a 400-year-old version of English that you're trying to read, compared to a modern English speaker, you're going to have less of that unintelligibility, but you're still going to have unintelligibility, and you're still going to have those verses that have those problems in them. There's going to be less of it going on because you're still in the same language. But this is why I brought up Wycliffe. Because if somebody was insisting that we use only the Wycliffe translation, guess what we'd be doing? I think we'd be using the same and other arguments as Mark Ward is against false friends in the King James. Of course, it would be more strongly warranted with the Wycliffe translation because it is much more unintelligible, but it's still English. And you can still make some things out in it, but much less because it is a good sight older. But anyways, and I would appreciate, Brian, if you want to say anything, you can leave it in the chat. You can send it to me in Messenger, however you want to do that. If you want to make a video refuting me and throwing me under the proverbial bus, I'd say that would be uncharacteristic of you, but, do what you got to do. Oh, and thank you for sending the books. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be amazing. And I'm looking forward to having them, especially because my wife and other people are like, but, God preserved his word, all the words of it and everything. And I'm just like, yeah, that's right. But then it forbade identicality and all this stuff. And I'm just like, Brian has taught a lot about the inspiration and preservation of the scripture. I think I need to start getting informed on some of the things that he's talked about. So I appreciate you sending the books. It's going to help out a lot. So here's some implications to consider. And this will be the final section in our discussion. And this is going out into the world. This is going out into the ether. This is going out into as many places as it can. Here are some implications that I see. The implications from the debate. The first implication is that I'm starting to question what influence Gail Ripplinger actually plays on King James onlyism. because the mindset that she brings forth in New Age Bible versions and in all of that word and in hazardous materials, I see as actually kind of typifying the response that we have seen to this debate. There hasn't been a lot of real honest, real scholarly, real sound, real thoughtful response to it. There's mostly been vitriol, nastiness, and most of it's, a lot of it has recycled some of the things that Gail came up with. I'm saying that Gail holds influence that she should not hold in people that don't subscribe to her at all. They don't subscribe to her arguments. They don't read her books, but they use the same arguments as her. Why do we talk about 64,000 missing words? Why do we use that number? It's a Gail Ripplinger number. Why do we talk about the King James Bible being 5th grade reading level? Where do we get that number? It's a Gail Ripplinger number. Where do we get the triquetra, or triquetra? Sorry, I always say triquetra. Where do we get that the triquetra, the triquetra, is a 666 Mobius symbol? It's a Gail Ripplinger argument. We deep dove on that some time ago, and I acknowledge that there is occultness behind it. There definitely is, but it has a far different origin from what Gail asserts. Even though she's this great big symbol scholar that had a that won a master's thesis or something, because of her research with somebody else on the migration of Druid symbols. Anyways, Gail Ripplingerisms affect and update effect. Okay, here. I write so weird. Gail Ripplingerism's effect on update resistance is unexpected and powerful. Resistance to updating implies KJV inspiration. To me, you have to believe that the King James Bible is perfect the way it is, and static and never to be changed. Inspiration goes back as far as, 1850 or whatever? That's how far back inspiration goes, because that's when they solidified the text that you actually have in your Bible. Not even 1769. Inspiration doesn't even go back that far. If you really pin down a Ruckmanite, not even the 1611 was given by inspiration, because it had all kinds of problems in it. If you read some of Peter Ruckman's works, Gary Hudson actually brought forward some of Peter Ruckman's articles where he talked about, sorry, this King James 1611 just isn't it. They didn't get out all the problems yet. They did it in 1769. No, they didn't. Oh, next article. Okay, they did it in, April 28th, 1850 or something like this? I forget the exact date. I have it marked in my calendar. Anyways. You guys are amazing. 7 of you still here for a talking head. For me, you guys are Bible version conspiracy nerds. That's who you are. I love it. Thank you guys for being around. You guys, making it rain gold stars tonight. You guys are awesome. So, the cultic KJV only. The inspiration of the KJV is a cultic King James only special, and a major Ripplinger talking point. And Brian Ross knows this better than anybody. If you question the idea that the King James Bible is not verbatim identicalityed, like you talk about in your book. If you guys don't have a copy yet, I have not read my copy yet, but I highly recommend it. Oh, there's Easter. Grab that. He's got a fresh perspective on Easter, which I think blows Sam Gipp's claptrap out of the water. It's great. And the myth of verbatim identicality. Thin little books. Love it. Ken Johnson. Little books. Love it. Big problem. with New Age Bible versions. Big problem. It was too big. Little books are nice. Even 300-page books, I think, are kind of pushing it for somebody to actually sit down and read it. Grab your copy today. I don't think I have it up on our website yet. I really should redo our library page. But those are the books. Grab them. Grab them. Oh, let's see. And a conspiracy against the Bible. So that is another Ripplinger talking point. But yeah, you disagree with her with that. You get to shreds, ripped to shreds. If you're not for verbatim identicality, if you're not, this is corrupt, this is pure, this is corrupt, this is pure, like her, if you don't agree with her on every little jot and tittle, oh boy, oh boy. Sweet little kind Christian lady that she was back in the 90s on these radio programs or what have you. Yeah. The way she's treated Brian, the ways that she's treated so many other people, the way she treated Nick, the way she treated D.A. Waite. It's pretty. And you go and check on the things that she says, and you find out that the research is pretty grimy. Yep. 'Tis fascinating. Is the King James Bible update okay, blah blah blah. And the Gail Ripplinger thing as well, the conspiracy against the Bible, called mistrust. Oh, I mistrust the new translators or what have you. No. You are actually just paranoid that everybody's out to get the words of God. Everyone. And there has to be some sort of inspiration that happens for an update. This even came through with Dan Hafley, and he's supposed to be part of the KJVRC. And they're not supposed to accept the Ripplinger right. You know, they're not supposed to accept the Gail Ripplinger mandate things, you know. It happens. And by the way, I'm not afraid of Gail's criticism. She watches this video or something and she goes, Joseph's an evil, terrible person. I really don't care. Because this channel is living. I am living. And while I'm making this recording, I am anyways, you know. And when I find out that I'm wrong on such and such point, then I can go, dang, I was wrong. Which is what I'm doing on certain points now. And maybe some point in the future, I'll go, actually, I was wrong about being wrong. So if I find out that there's a better argument out there that contradicts the one that I'm putting forward, then guess what goes on YouTube? Shoot, actually, I was wrong. I can use that argument against the Bible version conspiracy thing. But right now, what we're doing is we're trying to fact check things and find things out. We're not trying to dogmatize upon this or that point and trying to prove ourselves right on every little thing. Unfortunately, that's the position that Gail Ripplinger has herself in right now. That's why I'm glad to not be writing books as my exposure to public scruple. I'm making a video. It's not going to take me half of my life to make a video like it would to write a book. And then, oh crap, look at all the places that he was wrong. And no, I've got to stand by what I wrote and stuff. And it's like, no. I'll do that eventually, I think, Lord willing. But right now, we're in the learning phases. And you're joining me for it. And I'm proud of you. Actually, I am. There are a lot of people. There are probably hundreds of people that I'm friends with right now online that if they listened to just 10 minutes of this live stream, they'd have checked out and unfriended me. I may have been unfriended already by some of them. You guys have an open mind. You guys want to hear what's going on. You guys want to be up to date on what I'm finding out because I am pouring my heart and soul into this stuff. And I'm trying to look at it fairly from people's perspectives. I'm even listening to James White content now. And one of the main reasons why, I'm going to say it again, one of the main reasons why I'm feeling friendly toward people that we've labeled as enemies of the King James Bible is because of the outright, just revolting manipulation of facts, evidence, and downright lies that Gail Ripplinger includes in her book, New Age Bible Versions, in one chapter. I hope to make a video soon where I talk about the 3 worst that she has in her book, but they're just the 3 worst that I've found. That's going to be an interesting video. And I'm going to have to document everything, and it's going to be a long production process. We'll talk about production processes in a minute. All right, so is the King James Bible updatable according to King James only standards? This is another implication that we need to think about, we need to consider. Is there even a possibility that the King James Bible could be updated at any point in history? No. People that would answer no would say nope, because a rapture is going to happen, and the King James Bible is the only Bible right up until the end, just like different preachers have said, documented in The Word God Will Keep It by Joey Faust. And nope, it's the final form of the Bible. People are going to speak this English all the way up until the end. There's no reason to update it. It's going to be the version that the Antichrist fights against and burns and everything else like this. That's just it. Be all, end all, right there. That's it. All done. What if we're here another 1,000 years? It's unlikely, and it would go against what the early church fathers believed about when Christ would return. But what if we are? What if we're here for another 3,000 years? What if we're here for another 10,000 years? Is the King James Bible still going to be stressed as being the only absolute infallible Word of God 400 years from now, when it's twice as unintelligible in certain places? What happens when it's 50% unintelligible? Are there still going to be people that are like, King James only, when you can't understand half of it in a few thousand years? Or less time? Beowulf was even closer to us than a few thousand years. Unintelligibility for what we're speaking right now may not be that far away. Is the King James Bible ever updatable according to King James only standards? Well, if you're certain people, I'm not going to name out their names, but if you're people that believe that every translation before the King James Bible was an abomination and the only inspiration that has ever happened has been the originals and the King James Bible, and everything else is evil, wicked, and lying and not actually the Bible, if you're one of those people, then no, the King James Bible is not ever updatable according to any standards that they would hold. And that's really sad. Is the King James Bible updatable according to King James only standards? No, and never. Because then you'd be changing what Ripplinger, Gipp, and Ruckman said is the only real Bible. Sam Gipp would say that if you're Russian, and he said this on the Angerberg discussion, if you're Russian, you have to learn English, and it's not that hard. English is the worst, dude. The worst language. Everybody hates it. Sorry, but everybody hates it. It might be everywhere, but everybody hates English. You know, it lists things the wrong direction. It's so dependent on word order. Just spelling makes no sense at all. There's reels on TikTok, or not TikTok, on Instagram that I like, that are just poking fun at how we spell things, and it's hilarious. No, you don't see why. I love those guys. I don't even know what his name is, but those are great. Our spelling is horrible, and it's correct English spelling, but it's like, why? Anyways, when will the KJV be updated? In the distant future, only by inspiration, once God decides. God's going to decide when it needs to be updated. Let me ask you this horrible, this is going to sound blasphemous question. What if God decided to update the King James Bible when the new King James came out? Oh, well, it doesn't follow the Textus Receptus in these different... That's not what I'm talking about. And also, how do you know that those different parts were not what the Textus Receptus... Did you check all 100 editions of the Textus Receptus? I don't know if that's how many editions there are, but that's what I've heard. There's at least a lot of them. You guys on the textual front, you guys can deal with that. You guys already have dealt with that. Look up some of their material. I'm sure that Nick Sayers has done a lot of material on the New King James differences and how they came to be. But what if? What if God did decide that the modern versions were to come in at this point in history? It can't be. A mark of an intelligent, fair person is that they can entertain a different perspective than their own without accepting said perspective. Entertain that perspective for a little while. Think about it. And then think about it in light of a conspiracy and an end game, which is trying to make the Bible match a New World religion, like it talks about in the New Order of Barbarians. Watch the channel trailer. When will an update be too long overdue? And this is not talking about what was talked about in the debate. This is not, and John Hafley didn't even counteract the false friends thing. He's just trying to mop up the false friends thing and be like, no, it's not really that bad. And, oh, well, you don't really need to be able to understand the Bible that much, do you? Trying to sweep the sea back out, you know? Tide's coming in and he's trying to use a squeegee to get it all out. It's not working. But when will an update be too long overdue? Mark Ward has asked this question of many people over the years, and he's gotten back a few answers, but not many. One answer was it has to be 100% unintelligible before God would authorize it to be updated. 100% unintelligible? That's the level of Beowulf. And guess what? Your language has been without for a good 1,000 years at that point. A Bible? Is that okay with you? That's evil. I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? That's evil. Thankfully, that person retracted and said, I don't know, maybe 50%, maybe 20%, and they just kind of backtracked on that. But it is, I'm sorry, it is downright evil. If someone believes that the King James, every last ounce of anything that a living person can read and understand in the printed Bible, every last word has to be out of usage and just like, I can't read this upside down, backwards, forwards, through the page with a light. Can't understand any of it. It has to be like that. And not talking about, the natural man or anything else like this. Talking about just different language here. Sorry. Like, even the Sam Gipp implications, actually. Because you have to learn English if you're Russian. So Russian is going to be like we would take Russian and we'd be like, I can't understand any of this. Sam Gipp's answer to the update debate, apparently, is, nope, you've got to learn 1611 English or you're not having a real Bible. I don't know what his reaction has been to the false friends debate thing, the intelligibility debate. I don't know. I'd love to hear his reaction, though. I don't know if he's probably still alive. He's probably older by now, though. I actually found out that James White was around my age when Gail Riplinger's book actually came out. He had actually been working in apologetics heavily with Mormons, and then moved on to Jehovah's Witnesses, and had done Catholic stuff as well, a lot of Catholic stuff, before he found out from his parents that there was an issue of King James onlyism that was dividing churches, especially in the South. And then Gail Riplinger's book came out after some time after he heard that from his parents. A friend was like, hey, there's this lady talking about this crazy stuff on the radio. And he tuned in and stuff, and that was where he found out about Gail. He didn't call in and was like, I don't like you. His first interaction with Gail, to my knowledge, was when she said, yes, I'm here, when she was on her phone in Ohio. We'll talk about that at some other point, probably. Right now, we're at a long time. So, we may have to save the stuff surrounding the New Age Bible versions debate for another time. Since this one has taken about 2 hours, we'll have to see what happens. When will an update be too long overdue? How much of the Bible needs to be unintelligible before a revision is necessary? Throw a percentage at it. Just as yourself, in your mind. You don't have to throw it in the comments, but you could. If you do, let me know how much of the Bible, percentage-wise, it's okay to be unintelligible without referring to an outside source. And one person said 100%. They did not. Evidently, they did not, because they changed the number to much lower than that almost immediately. When they spit out 100, and then this guy was a King James Bible defending rising star and stuff like this, spit out 100%. Did you think about the implications of that? How long would people have been without even John 3:16? How long would that have been wiped into the dustbin of unintelligibility? Honestly, think about what you're saying. Thankfully, the young man who said this revised his percentage. Nevertheless, the implications of this are huge. And this is the thing. It wasn't just him throwing out a random number. The Riplingerite mindset, the Gippite, if there's such a thing, if there's even a Riplingerite, I don't even know. The mindset that they own, not that they have a cult and they're all called Riplingerites or whatever, but the mindset that is developed from Riplinger, a Riplinger-esque mindset, you might say, for lack of a better term. That mindset is a breeding place for this disregard for intelligibility. You get a list, sure, of archaic words. Sure, you get a little book that tells you, oh, look, you can find out all of the archaic words in the Bible just by looking at the context. Mark Ward is the first person to talk about false friends. And has been doing it like the guy who moderated the debate. Like he mentioned, he's done the lion's share of this stuff. He comes out with this, and the internet, the King James only internet, implodes. It can't handle the information. Most of the people can't anyways. But the breeding ground is of this mindset that, no, the King James Bible is all there is. And there has to be a direct influence, a direct not infiltration, a direct intervention from God before anything can be changed in the Bible, in the King James Bible. Because like James White's formula, the King James Bible alone is the Word of God alone. Okay, so that means that if I was Beowulf, and Beowulf is the Word of God alone, and only in the original, then any other translation is evil. An update, a heresy by, a heresy version by Satan and stuff like this. Wow. Only in the original, huh? Guess what we've done, guys? And remember, it's not the black ants that are the enemy. It's not the red ants that are the enemy. It's the guys shaking the jar. We've traded the originals only thing for a new one. It's the King James only thing. Because now it's only good in the original. Hang on one second. I've got a little boy to take to mama. I will be right back. Maybe. Jacoby is being transported off to bed by his sister. All right, so thankfully the young man revised what he said. But the mark of English becoming a new language is that it's completely unintelligible, just like the Greek is to people that don't read Greek, like me. And now the King James Bible is the new original autograph that has to be translated into updated English. (3024), another 1,000 years. 3024 English. The implications of that mindset are huge. And I think that as Christians, we can do better. And thank you, Brian, for the verbatim identicality book and the talks that you've given. I think it's going to be a good influence on the future. Because right now, we need to think about the past, the present, and the future. And we really need to think about that future. Dr. Jones, you've really got to think about that future now. Because you've got a kid. And I really got to think about the future. Because I've got 4 and another one on the way. And we are all influencing where this goes. And in today's day and age, everybody has a platform. You just have to, you can make yourself your own platform. YouTube, free hammer and nails to make a platform. Free board. Free property to put the platform on. We have a tremendous opportunity, guys. And the stakes are high. Let's not blow it. How does King James onlyism resist? How does King James onlyism only resistance to updating a parallel Vulgate onlyism in its resistance to translation? Here's something. I only have two guys stuck around for this part. Vulgate onlyism, where you have people that are like, nope. Jerome said castor oil plant instead of gourd, and they had an uproar. There was a riot in Jonah where he changed that. His eventually became the absolute holy infallible standard, even when the language had gone past the intelligibility, even the readability, because it didn't have reading a lot of the time, of the people. It was just gone. And guess who it was that ruled the world at that point, or that part of the world? It was the Vulgate-only church. And yes, Joey, I am aware of how Vulgate onlyism is not exactly the mindset of King James onlyism. It doesn't believe that the Vulgate is inspired or infallible and all this stuff, but how it does parallel it is that they were not okay with translation. And we are not okay, apparently, with updating. And I think we need to reconsider why we are not okay. The church has used this for centuries. That's what they say about the King James Bible. That's just what they said about the Vulgate. God obviously approves of it and it alone. Yeah, that's what they said about the Vulgate. It is a monument of Italian literature, Latin literature, Roman literature, whatever, which should never be revised because it's a holy standard of literature. It's a monument. It's just what they're saying about the King James. Is that an ultimate defense against revising it? No. And guys, remember, the potentiality of a revision is on the table. And the thing is that there's already updated Bibles out there. And if our resistance to the update that does bring the Bible in line with the New World religion, if our resistance to King James Bible update is what is all that is standing in the way, or maybe it's not even standing in the way, maybe it's just a huge distraction and the real problem is way over here. What we're doing right now and how we're reacting is, or could be, crucial. We're getting into a lot of deep, complex thoughts here, but I hope you guys are staying with me so far. What endgame presents itself after the fact? First, since Dan was totally unprepared, and I don't think that there was much preparation that he could have done that would have helped, other people would disagree with me with that. They would say, well, if he had another 3 or 4 months to prepare, maybe we would have had something awesome. But the problem is that the false friends exist, and now it's just a question of what to do about them. Thank you, Mark Ward, for bringing this to everybody's attention. First, since Dan was totally unprepared and is defending an indefensible position, apparently, he failed to counter Mark and his well-documented facts and well-thought-out arguments, because obviously he's been working at this a lot longer than Dan Hafley has. Sorry, I keep forgetting his last name. The KJBRC is scrambling. And hundreds of KJV-only people are coming absolutely unglued. The only question is how they will use it to their advantage. Because rest assured, they will lose. Well, not lose. They will use it to their advantage. An update could introduce Richard Day's key words, or it could just help people understand the Bible better. And talk about being unprepared. I happen to be the king of being unprepared. And I'm sure that if I was able to dedicate a few more weeks to this subject, I would be able to come up with more. But as it was, I was only able to dedicate a few hours, or not even a few hours, maybe 20 minutes to this over the period of a couple of days. To this list here, and there are probably a lot more grave implications to all of this than even what I'm exploring. No update could leave thousands of passionate and biblically sound Christians feeling more isolated and confused than ever. Because right now, let me be honest, King James onlyism is isolating. Fundamental Christianity is isolating. fundamental. Any religion is isolating because it's you versus everyone else. That isolation, that loneliness, that we're the only ones that even have any kind of handle on the truth whatsoever and everybody else go to hell, is that kind of mindset is dangerous. And that kind of isolation, and isolation paired with confusion is very dangerous, because then you don't know what to believe. That kind of isolation and confusion introduced into that's one reason why there's such a nasty King James only kickback against this stuff, because the isolation, the we're right and everybody else is wrong mindset is being introduced to a confusion. And now it's just like mixing baking soda and vinegar. And the thing about isolation and loneliness, something that I have felt my entire adult life, really, because of a lot of it has been because of the King James only thing. There's the closest church that we even considered going to was 45 minutes, was a half an hour away. Another one, half an hour away. Not saying that that's huge. Not saying that, oh, I don't want to drive that far. Oh my goodness. We've been doing it for 5 years. What I'm saying is that there's a church right down the road. There's a church not 10 minutes from here. There's churches all over the place. Oh, but they're not King James. So they're wrong. So that they're less of Christians. We're the real. What? What does that have to do with the version of the Bible that you use? I'm a better Christian. I grew faster as a Christian because I use the King James Bible. I'm a fat, healthy baby. Like Gail Ripplinger said in an interview one time, oh, you're going to be a fat, healthy baby Christian if, or you could be a skinny baby Christian and read a new version. Okay? And then you find out it's just not true, and that's where the confusion part comes in. But that isolation, guess what it leads to? I've heard, and loneliness, I have seen this a lot with people that accept different conspiracy theories and things like this. Not saying that this is the only type of isolation and loneliness that's part of it, but pornography is something that comes in when there's the isolation, there's the loneliness, there's all of that. And it's not just isolation and loneliness from your spouse, from a girlfriend, from a partner, from whatever. It's not just isolation from that. It's isolation in mindset as well. Because you get into that all or nothing mindset where you can just kind of suspend your reality for a second and just be like, well, it doesn't, what if it's not true? And there's like, one little percentage and it just throws the whole world upside down, and I'm going to go for it and do it because there's a chance I'm wrong, and just, we've talked about that before on this channel. So, no update could leave thousands of passionate, biblically sound Christians feeling more isolated and confused than ever. That's one thing that has happened to Roman Catholics a lot, is they get built up into this absolute perfection and infallibility of the church, and they're introduced to, oh, guess what? Satanism and this and that. And they're just flick like a switch. Light on, light off. And that's really sad. Either way, then this is one reason why I think people are so they have to, and they're used to doing it. They have to think of Mark Ward. Mark Ward equals evil. Because if they don't, then they have confusion mixed into their isolation, and they've got a problem that they don't know what to do with it. No King James only author has prepared them to meet the false friends. Thank you for your comment. I'll get to you in a second. Either way, the overall KJV only response to label Mark Ward as the enemy and make him, it has been to label him the enemy and make him an object of extreme hatred. You talk about, we have this meme that floats around King James only circles. I'm sure you've seen it, where there's like the mob and everything. What they do when they say you're King James only? Well, guess what? You go into a King James only church and you're carrying a new King James or an NIV. People looking at you like, you know, it happens. Guys, come on. We're ready to burn Mark Ward at the stake, a lot of those people. People are like, I'll debate him. I'll shout him down. I'll punch him in his effeminate little face. This is the reaction that he's getting. Honestly. This alone serves the true enemy's purpose as we fight and bite among ourselves. Not saying that it's the only thing that serves his purpose, but if he wants a purpose to be served, our reaction to Mark Ward and our fighting and biting among ourselves on an Andersonite level, guys. I mean, my goodness. As far as fighting and biting among yourselves, the Andersonites take the cake. Expand Andersonitism to the level of Christianity, and you have about the same thing when people are reacting to Mark Ward. There are people out there that literally want to burn him at the stake, I am sure. It's not the black ants or the red ants. It's the one shaking the jar. Where do you think things will proceed from here? Guys, the implications are huge. Stakes are high. It's not, oh, Gail Riplinger's going to roll the dice for us. She's going to win the game. She's going to hit the home run. Peter Ruckman is not going to come back from the dead and rescue us. As Brian Ross said to me one time, there's a new generation now, people around my age group, once you kind of get disillusioned with, what you have thought for, like your young life, when you're like, really passionate about stuff and you're just like, and then, you start, kind of thinking about things and figuring things out and stuff like this, and you get into the disillusionment and everything. There are a lot of people in that age bracket. I forget what the age range is for it, but there's a pretty set age range for it. It has nothing to do with midlife crisis. And that's where people start questioning what they think. And he said there are people now that are questioning what we have been told, what we have been taught in the King James only circles. And I think it's a good thing. But one thing that we got to hold on to too is the idea that manipulation is going on, and it's going on inside. Remember what Richard Day said. He said, you think that the churches won't stand for us to change the Bible to match the New World religion. You think that they'll just be like, oh, we'll never accept this. He said, he didn't say these exact words, but pardon my French. Au contraire, mon ami. That was awful. That was awful. And also, it's probably mixing two different languages, so forgive me. He said, on the contrary, the churches are not only going to be okay with us doing it, they're going to help us do it. And I'm not just talking me, this is Joseph now, not Richard Day. I'm not just thinking, okay, Marilyn Ferguson, whatever, the New Age infiltration kind of stuff. I'm not just thinking that. I'm thinking that just Christians are going to do it too, or be involved in some capacity. There's not a lot that Christianity can do about if there is another level below Christianity that's actually pulling the strings. Like Freemasonry would kind of be behind Protestantism, as they would say. The Nosferatu are probably also behind Roman Catholicism, as Bill Schneblin talks about. We can talk about that all later at another point in time. I do want to talk about Flood Day, though, because Halloween is coming up in just a couple of days, and we're going to talk about it right now. Think about it. We're going to leave it with this. Where do you think things will proceed from here regarding the readability debate? Flood Day. This little guy right here, you can go to cardcarryingchristians.com/flood. Or no, not flood. Halloween. Look it up. We made a little flyer here about it at the one point. Thin paper, I don't really like it. We'll have to put it on a thicker paper at some point. We didn't print any this year. We still have some left over from last year. Right now, our only distribution comes from the people that are at our church, and we have very few. And that's what I'm talking about with the isolation thing. Anyways, fact 1. Yeah, I just put 3 facts. They're obviously up for debate, I'm sure, but here's basically what I learned from Ken Johnson, an expert on the Dead Sea Scrolls. The origin of Halloween has been obscured for centuries. That's fact number 1. A little bit of fill-in information that I give after each fact is what the point is. According to the ancient Jewish book of Jubilees, Noah told his descendants to observe holidays, including the anniversary of the flood, corresponding to our Halloween. The commemoration of the destruction of the pre-flood world and its evil was eventually corrupted into the celebration of the resurrection of that evil. Fact number 2. Most people are unaware of the dark history of Halloween, because there is a dark history, regardless of what inspiring philosophy wants to say about it. And I know we just had a live stream just about the same time I started. He did a live stream where he's like, the pagan origins of Halloween nonsense, stuff like this. I'm sorry, but the Satanists aren't going to slowly stop beating their drums and be like, oh, this wasn't a pagan holiday, dude. Oh, well, okay, well, I'm out. Oh, see ya. They're not going to do that just because Inspiring Philosophy releases a video about All Saints Day. Please. But I'm looking forward to watching that live stream if I do, or I don't know if I will. We'll have to see. Depends on if I get around to it. There is, I think, one of his videos or 1 or 2 of his videos on Halloween on this page. So go right ahead to cardcarryingchristians.com/Halloween. Most people are unaware of the dark history of Halloween. Those who practice evil pre-flood occultism, which there are plenty, even in churches, now control Halloween as a celebration of the practices and wicked beings which provoked God's wrath and brought the flood. That's my take on it. I'm worded a little bit strange, but let me reword it for you. The people who practice the pre-flood occultism are the ones behind the corruption of that day to a celebration of the wicked things that were before the flood. And the wicked things that brought the flood in the first place. Today, Halloween still celebrates death, monsters, and human sacrifice. Most people who learn why we carve pumpkins, dress in scary costumes, and burn bonfires, or even bob for apples, feel sick afterwards. Fact number 3. Most of us have gone trick-or-treating. Candy seems to be able to make most things exciting. Halloween parties are hosted by friends. This is how most people and many churches celebrate Halloween. This is a fact. Okay, that's a fact. A lot of them do. All right. Most of us have gone trick-or-treating. Candy seems to be able to make most things exciting. Halloween parties are hosted by friends, family, work, and church. We believe that how and if we celebrate Halloween should be reevaluated. And I leave it with that because I think that whether we celebrate it or not should be reevaluated from both perspectives. A day to remember the goodness and the judgment of God may be appropriate. Which is one reason why it might just be a good holiday. That's the image right there in the pumpkin of Noah, because that's the anniversary of the flood. And I designed this myself. And if you want to take a picture of your screen, maybe that little QR code there will help you out. Alrighty. We highly recommend Dr. Ken Johnson's book, Ancient Paganism, for a thoroughly researched and biblical perspective on Halloween. And please visit cardcarryingchristians.com. Cardcarryingchristians as one word.com/Halloween. And there it is. Ancient Paganism by Ken Johnson. Pick up a copy today. It's only 172 pages long, which, as far as books go, is not bad. And it's in a totally readable point size. It's amazing. So now I'm going to go through your comments. See how many people want to lynch me. I've gotten a lot of comments tonight. So let's scroll all the way to the tippy top and see what's going on. And of course, most of these people have probably checked out by this point, but whatever. All right. There's me, almost ready. There's Brian Ross, greetings. It might be like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, which replaced Kevin with the Antichrist. Go Gale. Hannah has some humor. I'm not sure that I get it exactly, but... Oh, and by the way, Kissinger? Who was it that... Oh, yeah. James White equated Henry Kissinger with, the Antichrist, where people are like, oh, dice up his name and numerology and stuff, and oh, he's King James. It reminded him of Gail's, her acrostic algebra. Kissinger, from an interview that was on the Underground Church just recently, there was a lady that was part of MK Ultra as a child, and one of her alters was actually a sergeant in the army. So they had programmed into her mind this sergeant. They do that usually through traumatic torture. They shatter your personality and they build new ones out of your broken personality. So she flies a helicopter, and I believe Nixon was there, and he's boasting about how they have 16-year-olds flying helicopters now. It's so amazing and easy and stuff like this, and it's like, no, it wasn't because of that. And Kissinger. Oh, can I see her for a minute? I'm just going to kind of call her aside. I want to have a word with her. So he knew how to do this. He knew how to call up a different alter. And what he called up, this altered personality, was her, I guess you could say, her Marilyn Monroe personality. And yeah, he got his jollies and sent her back on the helicopter. MK Ultra and other such programs are sick. So, I blasphemed. Blasphemy, Joseph. Gail can do no wrong. Can do not wrong. That's okay. At least in her own mind. Yes. Of course not. Dr. Ruckman wanted to do the margin thing, but his reference Bible totally failed at it. Yeah. I would agree. The Ruckman reference Bible. Amen on inspiration. Okay. Still friends with that guy. What is the proof that the Kilgard scale was wrong? Okay, so anyways, it's not Kilgard. I don't know what you're talking about. Kilgard. So anyways, the Flesch Kincaid grade level indicator is what she said. The problem is that it doesn't evaluate texts that use archaic senses all the time. And it also only evaluates by syllable. So when Gail says, oh, the King James Bible is easier to read than the NIV based on the Flesch Kincaid grade level indicator, it's not true, because it only counts syllables for readability. It doesn't compare a 400-year-old translation to a modern translation. It doesn't. That's not what it's designed for. Use other methods. Moving on. It only counts syllables. Mark Ward has a whole expose on it. Yes, thank you very much. Brian Ross says the eth endings enhance the force of the text when it is being read aloud. David Teams addresses this in Majesty. I don't remember that part being in Majesty, but I'll have to look that up. I have the book and the audiobook. That was an excellent read. Excellent listen. I like listening better because I learn better that way. Revolution says, hello. You have characterized Ward's position pretty perfectly. So I hope that you mean that I represented it accurately, because that's what I'm concerned with. James White as well was interested in representing Gail Ripplinger accurately in his statements in his book. We're just going to touch on this and then I'm going to move on. He said, okay, let's bring this to Gail. When I have a criticism, I will fax it to her. And he did. He would fax his criticisms and be like, okay, I want your comments and I want your corrections. If I'm misrepresenting you, please tell me. She would never respond. Eventually, and she has said this before, that when she would see the cover letter coming through, she would just turn off the machine. Didn't have time for it. But then, just before it was about to be published, that is the King James only controversy, she threatens Bethany House with a lawsuit if they publish the book, because it was defaming her character or something like this. So the lawyers and everybody went through it, make sure that all the I's were dotted, all the T's were crossed, everything was correct, everything was on the up and up. Nobody did that for Gail Ripplinger. And actually, she threatened them twice with a lawsuit. Legally actionable lies, I'm sure was the phrasing. And they published it anyways, and she never sued them. Because she wasn't interested in actually suing anybody. She was interested in making sure the book never came out. Brian Ross responding to the dude. I'm coming around to your point about the meaning of kept close. Ooh, what's going on here? Fascinating. All right. Enrique Mata, I believe is how that's pronounced. The old Puritans preached sermons on the topic of will worship. It was one of their favorite topics. Also, they preached a great deal about worship in general. I'm sure they did. That would be fascinating actually to read. And yes, the old Puritans, you don't hear a lot about will worship today as a term. But the thing is that is not a false friend. It is a false friend if you look at it and you're like, okay, this means that you're worshiping the will of man, though. So you're a Nazi, and you're Crowleyan or whatever. You're worshiping the will is what Peter Ruckman got out of that. But since the old Puritans preached about it, that's where it's in a niche that is outside of common usage. And it's more of a term that is used in a specific application. So like besom or besom, actually, I think is how it's pronounced. Mark Ward mentioned. That means a broom, but a besom is a particular type of broom that was common in 1611, from what I've gathered. So that would not technically be an archaic, completely out of use word. It would be an archaicism, however, because it is used very specifically today for like craft stores or like a museum or something like this, or somebody that makes it for Etsy or something. Then you would, have a besom.com or a besom store or what have you. So anyways, will worship would also be along those kind of lines because it still retains its meaning, but it's still a part of the old Puritans preaching. So it's not a common use kind of thing. And it can also function as a false friend because it has the compound word there, will and worship going together, and giving a false thought regarding that if you don't refer to some other type of information, such as the Greek or the old Puritans, as you mentioned. Hey, Hannah. The problem is you can still read and understand the KJV with the false friends. You can't understand everything, but okay. It is making a mountain out of a molehill. Over time, you may refine your definitions, but you still get your spiritual growth. You still get your spiritual growth, sure, but then you have parts of the Bible that are obscured. So say we take a modern translation, and we take, let's say just 50 verses, and we introduce, instead of, words or pairs of words, we introduce a nonsense word that means nothing. Just like, sit on a keyboard, now you have a word. And we do that. And we do that to a translation. Now, first of all, that's not good. And second, you still get your spiritual growth from it. But when do we take the butt prints out of the translation? Anyways, I thought that might help to clarify what I was saying. Especially because you're still going to find areas in your modern versions that you will be unfamiliar with and will cause some stumbling or halting. Ward has not gone through his. Okay, not sure about that. But anyways, stumbling and halting, yes, limping, wavering on your feet. That's where halting is used, apparently, in the Bible, how it's used. And halting, I always thought it meant stopping between two opinions. So that was a false friend. Didn't get that till recently. Preferred Bibles with the same scrutiny and determined as many or more faults. Not quite sure what you're saying there, but that's okay. And I love Shakespeare, even if I don't know the words or the sentence structure. It's a heavy group of literature right there, but classic and amazing, very well thought out. I grow with the attempt, yes, and expand my mind, yes. There are several translations of Beowulf. Yes, there are. Oh, dang, where would I even find that? I don't think I even have my old. I got a copy of it from. I think the copy of it that I bought from Kent Hovind's ministry way back in the day, CSE, and I bought a copy of Beowulf from them. I'm pretty sure that was the old one. Oh, if I saw just the opening lines of it, I'd be like, oh, that's it. But anyways, I would read a modern translation if I wanted to understand it, but if I want the flavor, you know, like kind of like food. If I want to be able to digest it, go to Whole Foods. If you want to have the flavor, you know, go to Chick-fil-A. Anyways. All right. So anyways, yes, read the old John Bunyan. Beowulf is hard. Yes, it is. And I've Steven Anderson rattles off the first couple of lines of it. It's like, wow. Would love to get Tolkien's take on Beowulf. Is that widely available? Talk to my friend. He's not exactly a Tolkien scholar, but he knows a lot about Tolkien. He's big on that. I would love if there was a Tolkien translation. I'd be okay with that. Of Beowulf, just so you know, I would be okay with a Tolkien translation of Beowulf. Without Ward's arguments, I couldn't answer a Wycliffe onlyist. That is correct, because we would have to use the same idea of, you know, we have to translate it into a language that is intelligible to people. Oh, but it's the same language. We'd be using the same arguments as Mark Ward in that case, is my point. I'm very interested to hear what Brian Ross has to say about that, since he's the one that made the video regarding it. There's still 5 of you guys. I love it. Wow. This is really this is what I love about this subject. It is engrossing. Sometimes we go till like 2 or 3 in the morning and I'm like falling asleep at the mic, hitting my face on it. It's just absorbs you. And it has done that for me. I've been doing this channel thing for what? Over 3 years now. I should really see how long it's been. But it sucks you in. But so far, we have enough money to keep this thing open, and I have a little bit to use on the side. But there's no real money in this, anyways. Nobody's getting independently rich off of selling books. But you know, the most income that we have right now from it is actually the Buy Me a Coffee patrons, and it's been great. You guys are awesome. All right, if Ward is wrong, I pretty much couldn't. Okay. Got to go, Joseph. Enjoyed listening to your kids fight each other in the background. It reminded me of a past life so distant, welcoming yet over yonder hills, but not forgotten, Selah. I love it. And I was hoping that this would cut out more of that, but when I talk, the noise gate opens, so it's like the only quiet part is when there's like no direct sound. Anyways. Nick Sayers says, yes, back from Pakistan, just playing catch up on this vid 1.5x. Yeah, don't blame you. Sometimes I'll push it to 1.75. 2x is usually okay, but it's more when I can concentrate a little bit. I'm still trying to get used to 2x, but I do think I have to start actually digesting most of the content that I consume at 2x speed at this point. Let's see. Thomas Holland, yep. And I agree with your assessment of 1 Corinthians 14. Okay. Dr. Ruckman and Mrs. Ripplinger run all King James onlyists, whether consciously or subconsciously. That's pretty. Oh, David Otis Fuller as well. because David Otis Fuller, as I understand, was along the same lines, but maybe not quite as crazy or as extreme. Not saying that they were both insane, but I don't know. There's got to be something going on with Gale. I've talked about this before, but I kind of suspect that Gale may have been one of those altered personalities. I don't know, because I don't live with her. I don't see her interact on a daily basis. I don't know if she's schizophrenic, but schizophrenia is a typical misdiagnosis for somebody that's actually had their personality purposely fragmented. I believe the number of personalities is 162 personalities. That is the standard practice for fragmenting an individual's psyche. And also, having a spy that has no idea they're a spy is very practical and very possible and used constantly. So, like, you get caught or whatever, and it's just like, you have no information to give them because it's in a different part of your brain that you can't access without a certain set of words, just like in The Winter Soldier. This stuff is real, guys. This stuff is real. Basically all arguments for it on a popular level can be traced back to those two. Bingo, bingo, bingo. Brian Ross, still here. Oh, he just really pushed through. And I don't know if he's here right now, but that guy's a trooper. There will be no attack video. I appreciate the pushback. That's nice. That's one thing that I like about Brian, too. And he also doesn't make a little PDF against everybody that contradicts anything he says like Gale does. Anyways. Theosis is biblical. 1 John 3:2. Amen. 1 John 3:2. Let me look that up. Oh. And I'm going to get out my trusty dusty King James Bible on my Remarkable, because that's the one I use now. Oh, we're already in 1 John. Nice. 1 John 3:2. All right, let me just make sure that this is correct. 1 John, yes, 3, verse 2. Beloved, now we are the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. I'm being paged. Excellent point on 100 years from now. Thank you. It was quite shocking to me that this position is based upon a very, very particular eschatology. My position on Bible versions is dependent on Christ coming back in the next 5 years. We've been saying this since 1980 now. Yeah. Well, personally, I think that he's coming back very shortly, but it also depends on how our timeline is lining up. There could be there's a possibility, there's a conspiracy theory that there's actually I forget how many years, but it's like 500 or so years that have actually been added to our calendar. Charlemagne and all of that, apparently, according to this theory, never happened. So, we'll have to see what's going on with that. But if that's the case, then we could have another 600 years before Christ comes back, and it would still be in line with the year 2000, like the first century Christians talked about. Excellent question on the NIV or NKJV. Thank you very much. Awesome beard Bible version conspiracy. God bless. Ah, that's nice. That's pretty cool. I appreciate that. Thank you, Matthew. I've been let's see, I've been using beard oil that my wife made for me. That's helped a lot. So if you do have a beard, or if you don't like having a beard, you need beard oil and you need beard butter at the very least. At the very least. I do about 3 drops of beard oil, and then the container of beard butter that I have, it's an Everyman Jack for now. I'd rather get a different type, but that was what it was available at the time. I usually dip in the tip of both fingers and wipe off the tip of one finger. It's very specific, I know, but it seems to not be too much. So, but anyways, I'm also thinking, like I mentioned in the last one, I trimmed this up a lot because I was tired of getting it in my mouth every time I do anything. So, but what I'm thinking about doing is actually growing this out more and doing, like, the handlebars like that. I've seen this commercial for like beard care products, and this guy's like got this really sculpted beard and like, the long, and I'm just like, that'd be pretty cool. My wife would never kiss me again, but that'd be pretty cool. Anyways, all right. People use this excuse all the time, and it's totally bogus. If you have the internet or a dictionary, the KJV is perfectly legible for modern English speakers. If you have the internet. All right. Wasn't expecting that. Alrighty. So, yes, accurately is what I'm referring to. Okay. So nobody really had any questions tonight, so that's good. Tonight was also a Q&A. Kind of, but did I even have that in the title? I don't even remember. But anyways, nobody had any questions. There was no quadruple question marks. So I think that's about it. We've gone for 3¼ hours, and that's all set. I now have it programmed so that when I close down this live stream, it'll play the outro video, which is really cool. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to play a couple other reminders. I don't have a video for the Buy Me a Coffee, but if you guys want to check that out, go right ahead and see if it's worth it to you. You'll have a direct line to me, and you'll be able to join us for our scheduled weekly, every Friday night, live stream that we do with our co-conspirators only. And they're probably getting tired of hearing what I'm discovering in New Age Bible versions and what I'm learning about the debate that she had with James White and everything, and they're probably getting tired of it, but they're going to be getting more of it on Friday. And they've had a break, so be warned, guys, be warned. There's more coming. Much more coming. If you guys want to tune into all of that, it's co-conspirator only. But, you know how. You know how to become a co-conspirator. I know a lot of things are tight these days. $7 a month can sometimes seem like a lot, but this channel it's a lot of work that I don't have to be doing necessarily, but it's a lot of work and it takes a lot, and right now I've got to get going. So, God bless. Have a great night. Read your Bible like the devil's after it, because there truly is a Bible version conspiracy.